Okay. I would like to welcome Miss Lee Yeryoung, who is doing a project that very interesting project, the Living Room Project, exploring music's universality in our day-to-day space. And I have heard a lot of different projects that is very similar to this project. So I'm actually intrigued to hear about this project happening in Korea. So if you are ready, please take it away. Thank you.
Okay, I will share my screen. Um, can everybody see the screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. So, good evening, everybody. And thank you for joining us here today at this seminar. So I am Yeryoung Lee, and I'm currently a student at Seoul National University. I take part in quite a few music projects that are all related to kind of expanding the boundaries of music so that it's not confined into one area or one location. And today I will be presenting you the Living Room Project, which is one project that we did regarding this in November 2023. So I'll present today an overview, sorry, of how this project went, what kind of steps we went through, and the final product, which I will hopefully be able to show you a short video on what became of our project. Um, yes. Oh, sorry. Uh, yeah, that's better. Okay. So the Living Room Project is one that experiments with different genres of music to discover how they may coexist. Its first performance under the name Extended Samul Nori was performed in November 2023, November 10th to be exact, and it was done in a place called My Allée Itaewon. So we call it a first performance because hopefully we're able to take the idea of the project and expand it further into hopefully more renditions in the future. This presentation will be focused on what we did last November. Um, yes. Oh, sorry. Okay. So in the Living Room project that was conducted last November, there was a focus on Samul Nori and John Cage's philosophy of music. And this first performance aimed to illustrate how across genres and across different countries, the philosophies of music are similar. And we aim to communicate that at its core, people's approach and consideration of music are in harmony with one another. Hopefully, this would be able to show that there is, in fact, a universal culture of music um, where everybody fundamentally has this idea of what music is, which is in harmony with each other. And from this, we aim to also communicate that music is unconstrained and it can be found anywhere and it is found everywhere. Okay, so we're explaining briefly about the project's background. So, what led to the Living Room Project, and why did we specifically focus on Samul Nori and John Cage? So, the idea for Extended Samul Nori and the Living Room Project as a whole was from the realization that when we were studying Samul Nori and John Cage, we found that both philosophies were close similarities to each other. Um, we kind of understood both as examples where they are attempts to bring music closer to the masses, both physically in terms of location and emotionally. Delving upon that a little bit, so Samonori was first developed in 1978. It was first performed in 1978, and the idea behind Samonori was arguably in order to bring kind of Korean traditional music closer to its modern audience, to modern Korean audiences. So in that sense, it has its basis in Pungmulnori, which is a traditional form of Korean music, and but it transformed it into something that modern Korean audiences and modern global audiences would be able to resonate with more. And we can see its success today as it's at the forefront of Korean culture, especially when we present it to a more global audience. Um, yeah, so Samonori, in essence, is basically a twist on Korean traditional music. And we found similarities of Samonori's background to Don Cage's Living Room music. The intricacies of John Cage's philosophy and his approach to music is a lot more complex than what I cover in this presentation today. But what we took from John Cage's philosophy is that ultimately it aimed to show that music isn't is not constrained to a specific place or location. It can be made with everyday objects, as is seen in John Cage's four movements. John Cage's living room music four movements, and it also communicates that it's not only location that is unconstrained, but also the people who can play music. It's intertwined into everybody and everywhere. So when we compare the ideals behind Samul Nori and John Cage's philosophy as I presented it, the participants of the project, including myself, began to observe that they are both attempts to make music just more accessible to everybody. And from this, the foundation of the Living Room Project arose. We had an idea that there's a universal culture of music, and that music, in essence, tries to become more accessible, meaning it tries to resonate more with the contemporary audience at all times. And so in that way, it possibly transcends the boundary of tradition and border and will forever evolve. The Living Room Project was the first step that of expanding this idea, and hopefully there will be more attempts to further this in the future. So now we have the vision for the project. So the first step was to try and find the right setting, the right environment to carry out our vision. And fortunately for us, it was quite lucky. We were quite lucky because we heard of an opportunity where there was going to be a new creative art space that was opening in November in 2023. And My Allée is a lifestyle company, but it was opening a new space in Itaewon that was going to be used for artists and musicians to experiment. It was for a space for creative and experimental expressions. And so in order to celebrate, using the opportunity of the opening ceremony for this new space, we were able to collaborate in order to carry out the Living Room Project. And so the Living Room Project at the time, or back in November, was part of the opening ceremony for the launching of the new space. So who were the participants of the project? The participants were mainly Seoul National University students who were studying different disciplines. Initially, notice was given to students who were enrolled in classes studying performative arts and music, but these students in themselves were from very diverse backgrounds, ranging from music students to one studying humanities or social sciences. There wasn't any limitation on what study you were majoring in or what discipline you were interested in, because we felt that this project should be an opportunity for all backgrounds to, all disciplines to interact with each other to create a project. It was more of a expressionist project rather than a solely genre-based music project. So because of this diverse background of all the participants, it was an opportunity for a lot of freedom in thought and freedom in expression to emerge. And the combination of these different disciplines was ultimately how we feel the Living Room Project was able to prosper. Before moving on, I'm delving into a little deeper about how this diversity was important. So it was mainly because when we only talk about musicians and those studying music, there might be a tendency for participants to fixate on certain music elements, on certain genretic techniques. But because we had students who appreciated music and loved it, but also did not learn formally what all the intricate techniques were, we were able to go a bit further and transcend the kind of traditional lines, borders of each genre, so that the process of intermixing the different genres was more appreciated and it was able to happen within our project. So we feel that this idea of interdisciplinary approach in this project is one of the key findings and one that we hope to further continue in the future. And we hope that in any attempts at kind of more experimental music and music that is trying to encompass a wider range of audience, we hope that the interdisciplinary approach will be more used in the future as well. So these were sort of the initial ideas that were in the process of making the music. I've introduced this in the presentation because I do feel they are important in understanding how the project worked. So first of all, one of the key questions was, do we include or follow the Korean percussion beats, or should we just abandon them completely? And how do we intermix the musicality of two different styles? For example, John Cage's style and the style of traditional Korean music. Do we need to at all, in the sense that do we need to follow these songwriting ideas, or should we abandon them? So these were the kind of key questions that led our project, and ultimately there isn't we decided to do this or not, because we decided to encompass all of it. So if you later on in the project, you will observe that in some areas we were following Korean percussion beats but with a twist, and in others we were going completely, we were improvising, or we went with what our mind told us to at the time. So so the main part of our project was that everyday objects were used. So as you can see, we were using pots and pans, plates, vases, even books, tables to make music. There wasn't really a limitation on what we could or could not use, because our idea was that everybody can and does make music, as per John Cage's philosophy. One thing we did be careful was to make sure to incorporate some elements of the Korean style, and this was because we wanted to show that the philosophy behind Cage's music, in that music is everywhere, is not only constrained to Cage and Cage's background, but it can be seen in all different countries. So we did attempt to ensure that music was made using a little bit of Korean beats. But other than that, there wasn't really a strict restriction on our performance. So I'm going to show you a short video, which is a good summary of what our performance was.
Please don't forget to share sound.
취향을 잘 보여준다고 생각해서
Excuse me, could you try it again? We couldn't hear anything from this side, and maybe you might forget to just not to share the sound.
Sorry. Yeah, sorry about that.
No problem.
Yeah.
Or just go to share and then click share sound. I think that should work.
Here?
Yeah, I think you go to share and then click share sound. I think that should work.
Oh, sorry. Yes.
Yes.
I'll play from here.
취향을 잘 보여준다고 생각해서.
Are you able to hear the sound now?
Yes, perfect. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. giving a summary of what our project became. And so breaking down the project a little bit. So if you're familiar with John Cage's living room music, there are 4 movements. And although we kept this structure, when we were planning our project, we kind of divided and gave a specific purpose to each of the movements. And by doing so, we feel we were able to more specify a little bit how to find some sort of culture in this idea that music is everywhere. How do you find a line of thought inside the idea that there is no specific guide? So the first movement was aimed to communicate that music performance is not confined to a certain space or time. And this is a picture. The bottom big picture is an example of the first movement. So basically, these performers were using everyday objects like the table, the chair, the floor, these little vases in order to just make music, almost like what John Cage is saying. And through that, I feel we were able to communicate this first aim that it's not confined to a certain space or time. You don't need to be on stage. You don't need to be in Korea to perform Korean music. So the second movement was about the idea that music is all around us. And although it's not in the video, or what we had done is we played videos of John Cage's second movement performed in various locations and on screens around the area. So there were even tablets in front of the toilet that were continuously playing the second movement. There were screens on many walls, on doors, and this overall just emphasized that music is literally everywhere. So the third and fourth movement conveyed the idea that even what seems like professional music can be done by everyone and anyone. That music is free, both literally and in a conceptual way as well. And this can be seen in these photos where, if you look at this toy piano, this is John Cage's third movement in the Living Room Project, and essentially we were trying to show that this is not a professional stage. We just have people, visitors, just watching and playing the music, and so this was in order to show the idea that yes, a person can be a professional, but they also do not have to be professional to play the music. It can be done anywhere. And finally, the fourth movement is the picture underneath. There wasn't a very, it's not very clear, but essentially what these performers are doing is that they're playing part of Korean traditional percussion music on everyday objects we find in our living room. This was essentially to show that yes, Samul Nori is a form of professional and traditional music, but you don't have to be a professional player to do so. And also it was to communicate this idea we all shared that music in itself, even what seems professional, is only professional because it's almost put that way. Like, if you simply learn the beat, you can also, like, music isn't defined by its boundaries, and there's a universal agreement on that. And this was particularly the area where we kind of showed the similarities between the two different genres of music in their background and culture. So, concluding, the Living Room Project was based on the idea that music is similar, and we hope, and I think we started to maybe just even a little bit find that there is a universal culture of music. There is a long way to go in that there are lots of places where we can improve in the future should we continue on with this project. Obviously, we need to try and, even in this project, despite its attempts, it was confined to a certain genre and a certain style, I think, although it may be not very clear. So I think our future attempts should be made at trying to, in a way, transcend these boundaries even further, which is not a very easy task. And also the main idea behind this entire project as well was this interdisciplinary approach to music projects. And like I have stated before, it is a crucial area I think we do need to try and improve on, to not constrain music only to musicians and to music academics, but to other areas, because music is certainly all around us. Thank you. That will be the end of my presentation.
Right, thank you very much for your presentation. It was very interesting. Any questions so far from the audience? In Thai, maybe? Or you don't have to, like I said. Any questions? Okay. Actually, I have two questions from myself. I mean, I was just curious, were the audience aware that they were attending a music performance?
Sorry, could you repeat what you have said? I'm sorry.
And the audience, did they know that they attend a music performance, or were they just there for the opening of the ceremony?
No. So at the opening, so visitors were obviously informed that there was going to be an opening to the launching, but they weren't informed that there will be this specific performance. So in the first movement, how we actually began was we had the performance just acting as normal kind of visitors to the place, who then suddenly started playing this first movement that we have planned.
I see. If they were aware, I mean, if they were aware that this is a music performance, would the experience or the learning be different in your opinion?
I do feel if we had told them in advance that there might be a slight difference in attitude, in the sense that generally speaking, because I am a non-performer myself of music, I feel that if I go to a performance knowing it's a performance, I'm more inclined to kind of take a more subdued attitude towards it. So I feel that at least for until we kind of really navigate our way around this idea, the fact that they weren't told that it was a performance did make a difference in our findings as a whole.
All right, last one. So did the element of surprise contribute to the experience of the audience?
Yes, for sure. I feel that the surprise element was really the factor that kind of communicated to them in a way that expression, especially artistic or music expression, it's literally not constrained at all. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I think that should be all from me. I mean, if there's no question from us, so thank you very much for presenting from Korea. I suppose you're there, and I hope you have a great time. And thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me.